and welcome to Comfort.ai, making artificial intelligence your comfort zone. In this episode of Ethics Talks, I'm very excited to have Dr. Shahab Kalantar to be one of our guests, the first guest we have who is overseas, and we're doing this remotely. Dr. Shahab, thank you so much for joining us today. And we would love to know a little bit more about you and what you do, basically your day-to-day life.
Hi, Saba. Thank you so much for having me for these discussions. So let me tell you about my background. By education, I'm a roboticist, and that means that I'm interested in systems that have the ability to perceive the world around them. They certainly have the ability to act and change the world around them, and most importantly, they can make decisions about how to link perception to action. So that's the definition of robots. I mean, everybody knows what robots are. A lot of them are useless, and you can see them in media, and some of them are useful. And this is my educational background and my research as well. What I'm doing for a living, I'm a machine control engineer, or MCG for short. And that means that I'm working in an area of field robotics, which looks at useful machines that are already there, they're built, and we can see them all around us, bulldozers, excavators, compactors, scrapers, loaders in mines, and all these agricultural machines and tractors. So these are all already made and they're working around us. However, they are normally being operated by skilled operators. So what we do in the company I work for, which is called Topcon Positioning Systems, is to make them autonomous or semi-autonomous to be more exact, which means that we help the operators to actually not worry about up to 80% of what they're doing. And currently, in some applications, there's actually no need for any operators. There are some agricultural sites where the cabin where the operator sits, it doesn't even exist. In construction, it's a little bit more problematic, and for safety reasons, you still see cabins there and operators there, but most of the time they're just sitting there and drive the machine while the machine is doing most of the work. Ultimately, the goal is to eliminate humans from construction, from agriculture, from mining. Is there anything ethical about that? I don't know, but we'll discuss that.
Yeah, I would love to. There's so many things you've touched on. I think you're the first guests on our show who is involved in the robotics space, and that's a space that I get a lot of questions about. First of all, the first thing that people say when you talk about AI and robotics is like Terminator. So I would really like to dig into a few of the words that you said, but before then, tell us a bit about what your definition of artificial intelligence is and the role that plays in the work that you do, because I know you talk about automation. Is that the same thing as using AI, or is it sometimes that? Just tell us a little bit about the role that AI plays in your world.
It's a very good question, because traditionally, when people define artificial intelligence, and they mean doing things that we humans can do easily, but computers currently can't. That's not a very good definition, because look at a bacteria under a microscope, and you see that. I mean, it gives you the impression that it's intelligent. It's purposeful. It's doing something. It's eating. It's surviving. So you can't say that it's not intelligent. However, I can't say that we have any robots right now that is as autonomous as a bacteria. So basically, in connection with robotics, when we say intelligent, we don't mean a machine that can think like a human being. No, not at all. If I can make a robot that can think as intelligently as a cat, I'll be very happy. But we're not going to get there anytime soon. So basically, it depends on what you mean by intelligence. Intelligence, for me, is being able to survive in your world and propagate. That's what intelligence means. It doesn't mean that you can. So part of it is being able to recognize if someone is familiar or not, or try to find if the color is red or yellow. However, that only makes sense in relation to your survival. So that's my definition of intelligence. How do we use intelligence or artificial intelligence? So there's nothing intelligent about artificial intelligence. That's something that I believe. Machines are not intelligent. No, now we can discuss this thing. I mean, there's lots of materials on this thing. Is that we can go back to my previous example of a bacterium, and you can see that even very simple behaviors, unconscious behaviors, can give rise to to behaviors that actually look very intelligent. And there's no intelligence there, not the way we know it, but at the same time, they look intelligent. However, so I think that to have true intelligence, the machine or the being has to be conscious. We have no definition of consciousness. Nobody knows what it is. So I think it's still very premature to talk about artificial intelligence in that way. Now, do you use artificial intelligence from on a day-to-day basis? Absolutely. When you try to automate or something, a process, your machine. Let's say you have a machine, an excavator, which is digging some dirt and dumping it somewhere else, and we see that all the time on the roads. Now, for this to make sense, the machine, for this to be possible, the machine has to have a belief about what it is doing and what the world around it looks like. Mm-hmm. And then it has a multitude of sensors. Not he, actually it, reads all the sensors and tries to update its belief according to sensor readings, and then do some action, again, according to its current belief. Now, that's exactly what we humans do. For example, if you close your eyes and then extend your arm forward and then open your eyes and you see that the tip of your finger is 20 meters away, you won't feel good. Actually, you will feel very bad. How is that? Because your brain has a belief and about how you work, including the world, including the body works. And if you extend your arm, it can anticipate. It anticipates. It predicts the next state of the world. And if you open your eyes and what you see is not commensurate to the belief that the brain has updated, then things go very bad. Exact same thing with the machine, but machines don't panic. They just, something goes red on the display, say, well, I'm at a loss, and something has gone terribly wrong. Yeah. Anyway, so this cycle of sensing, perception, belief update, and then action according to the belief and goals is something that we humans or all animals do, including all these machines. So inherently, what we do on a day-to-day basis is actually implement all these things inside the machines. So that's one way to look at it. And another way we use artificial intelligence, which is closer to the buzzword that people currently use, is identification of black boxes. So a machine, for example. So look at a child, a human child. I haven't done this experiment. I'm not suggesting anything, but if you take a newborn child and somehow deform its limbs so that they look very differently and they work very differently, the chances are that the child will actually adapt itself to the changes in their limbs, because it actually acquires that information. So the brain tries to actually actuate the actuators, and then tries to get a belief or form a belief about how it itself works. So it anticipates, it predicts future, and then it measures and it sees how it goes. So this way, it actually identifies its own body. Same thing for machines. Machines have hydraulic systems, electrical systems. There's lots and lots of mechanics involved. And most of the time, trying to model these things analytically using physics is very too difficult for people to do. So what we do is that we get the input, we look at the output, and try to identify how this works. And for that, we use models, including neural networks. So that's how we, and there are other ways that we use artificial intelligence. So it's much closer to, down to earth sort of application of artificial intelligence than what you hear. But of course, at the same time, all these machines, because they're very dangerous machines, they have to make sure that they don't hit anyone. So they need to have sensors to tell them that you're too close to someone. And so basically, yes, we do use artificial intelligence at every step on a day-to-day basis.
You touch on so many interesting points. I feel like if I were to dig into all of them, it would be like one session per point that you're making. So one really interesting point that you made was, and I think it kind of goes back to one of the conversations I've had on some of my videos, is that there is no unified definition of intelligence, and therefore there is no unified definition of artificial intelligence. But your one is quite interesting. So you believe for a being to be intelligent, it also needs to be conscious. So there's a relationship between the two. I found that quite interesting. The other very interesting point that you raise is one of the things that you do is identification of black boxes. And that is one of the kind of like a main questions when it comes to AI ethics. It is the definition, identification of black boxes, and then subsequent to that, how you treat them. You also talk about making robots safe, kind of alerting them if they're kind of too close to a human being. Do you think safety is good enough to call a robot ethical, or do you think there's more to it?
I think it depends on. So first of all, let me just comment on ethics. And as we discussed before, I think that ethics does not even enter into the discussion of robotics and artificial intelligence, because all these machines, as they are, they just look at instructions and they follow instructions. So the instructions, if they are ethical, then you'll have an ethical machine. And if they're not, you will end up with a machine that you might call unethical. Just exactly like the definition of an intelligent or non-intelligent machine. It's like the behavior. So you look at the behavior, you think that the machine is intelligent or not, and then so because people, we just love to anthropomorphize. That's what we are, humans. So we look at the behaviors of anything, any physical thing that moves, try to label it as intelligent or not, ethical or not. However, from the standpoint of the machine, none of them make any sense. So basically, the entity that needs to be ethical is the person who creates the machine or funds the creation of that machine. And also the government or the governing entity that actually allows or tests the machine. In my line of work, it's been around for decades, and safety requirements or functional safety. It's a well-established area, and it doesn't look at, it doesn't concern itself with step-by-step operation of the machine. However, it enforces or mandates the inclusion of enough safety measures to make sure that the machine will not be able to hurt anyone. So, for example, how does that work? You put a special controller in between our brain, the brain that we have designed, and the actual actuators, or all these links and arms and things that the machines have. And if it senses that something is wrong, it just freezes them. As simple as that. So, let me give you a more clear example. You have an autonomous car on the street, and I would be more comfortable if the car had a laser system that made sure that if anything gets in the way, it would just freeze the machine in place, or destroys the machine, the car, or whatever. Doesn't matter. However, so it can be as simple as that. So now you go back to people like Elon Musk. You know that he has actually excluded lasers from its repertoire of sensors on a car. That's quite unethical. Why is that? Because he's it's just looking at to me it looks like he's saying that I can play any way I want because I can, rather than because it's meaningless to say that okay, I can do anything with vision because we humans don't need anything other than vision. However, the stupidity of that remark is that, well, your cars are not humans by any stretch of imagination. So basically, yes, I think that you're allowed to let your imagination run wild and do anything you want with your machines as long as you can have safety measures there, a safety switch that is 100% safe. And we see that on board airplanes. Airplanes are very, very safety critical machines. And it's not because they run algorithms based on machine learning. It's they may, but they may also make sure that none of that gets in the way of safety.
Interesting views. Another thing I wanted to touch on is since we've got into the conversation about autonomous machines, basically, you recently visited an exhibition in Australia, which I keep forgetting its name. Can you tell us a little bit about that exhibition and what you saw, what your takeaways were?
The Australian Land Forces exhibition, that was the name of the exhibition, and it was very interesting to an engineer because it's showcasing lots and lots of technology, and especially electronic technologies where the machines can actually decide on how to do things. Lots of robots were there, and military is giving them a try. Some of the applications are really that bad. However, the theme of the exhibition was ethics, or how war machines can be ethical. So basically, I don't get that. I don't grok that. It's a war machine is inherently unethical. War is unethical. I don't know what it means for a machine to be unethical. At the same time, ethical is a label that you can apply to humans. So a soldier may or may not be ethical, but a machine can't be ethical or unethical because it's not even conscious of what it is doing. So basically, I think that for a machine to be ethical, it has to be conscious. So it cannot be held responsible for anything. Now, what they're doing basically is that it's twofold. One is to offload responsibility from human soldiers and blame the machines if something goes wrong. Well, basically, this is unethical, I think. And on the practical side of things, we have systems that are termed ethical because they use mainly machine learning algorithms or neural networks, if you will, to identify potential threats and make sure that they try not to kill kids. or beat people or own people or stuff like that. And to me, this is, it's as an engineer, it's interesting. As someone who's just looking at these things from afar, it's basically doesn't make any sense. So if you want to do something ethical, start wrong, not not making machine. However, I don't. This there's one good side to this as well, because if you can make machines safe, I don't want to use the term ethical. If you can use your war machine safe enough so that it doesn't try to kill your own soldiers, or doesn't try to kill kids or stuff like that, or hurt them, then what you can make sure is that a lot of the horrible things that we see at war, the people doing statistical things, you won't see them again. I buy that. That's a good cause. Is that machines cannot be sadistic beings. They can't have joy by torturing enemy soldiers. However, humans can. So the good thing about this thing is to actually take action from humans who can do anything that you can imagine, horrible things, and give it to machines. So there's a chance that the machine, or 20% chance that the machine will actually go wrong. However, you can make sure that those bad things will not happen. Now, if you take this further and put yourself in place of the enemy, because they're not done, they will try to counterattack. So they will try to outsmart ethical, smart machines. I don't want to use the word ethical. Let's say smart machines, smart machines. And this can go on, this war can go on, and it can be very interesting questions. And very fun in terms of engineering. But yeah. So yeah, that's right. So it was a really interesting exhibition, and especially for the engineer. And so basically, to wrap it up, I think that organizations, military organizations in Australia, are trying to just actually put a ethical cloak on military operations that they have around the world. They're following Americans. I don't think that this is an Australian initiative. Anything initiates from there, and yeah, they follow.
Yeah, you raise a point there, and that was it was interesting from a point of view of an engineer. What role do you think engineers play in basically how ethical or unethical something can be?
The only way an engineer can be ethical by quitting his job. If the thing is that what he's doing is not ethical. I don't think that you'll find any engineer who would do that. I don't think that this is the responsibility. I don't want to downgrade the role of engineering, but I think that engineers are down below. They do the work, they do the groundwork, and they're not in a position to actually have a say, because as I said, instructions come from above, and those instructions, if they have enough safety requirements, because when you say ethics, it's a document. It's basically just a document of what to do and what not to do. This has to be translated in a set of instructions. These instructions get translated into machine code. Not machine code, just a language which machines can understand. And I don't think that the engineers actually get to have any role to play. However, but actually, no, there's no however. That's what it is, unfortunately. So ethics is something that is decided by, like, how can a soldier be ethical? They can't.
Don't you think, like, if they all believe that something should not, and they all of them should believe this, should be educated enough to understand. I'm talking about like a group of people developing something, whether you're a hardware engineer or a software engineer. But don't you think if all of them think that something is unethical and then none of them actually do the job, then people in power are only in power because of everyone else around them. But if all those people were kind of like, you know what, no, I don't think this is an ethical thing to do, or we shouldn't be doing this, or if they just stopped doing what they were doing, that would actually kind of shift the power back to the developers and the engineers?
Well, actually, it is not a new thing, a new question. We've seen many movies around this thing of scientists and engineers finding out that something unethical is being done, and they try to, but an average Joe, a typical person, wouldn't do any of those things. And so we humans have the interesting and strange capability to put all these questions under the rug and not think about those things. And honestly, I don't think that you can ask engineers not to get hired to do these things. Mm. So basically, yes. The only role that an engineer can play is to be aware of what's happening and trying to kind of, if they can, like inform people above them about the implications. So basically, no, now that I'm thinking of it, one way that engineers, I think you mentioned it yourself before our discussion, is that engineers are the best place to indicate to upper management about how accurate, how good the performance of the system they're working is going to be. So they should try not to be too optimistic. I think that the engineer in Tesla who told Elon Musk that, we don't need lasers. I think that guy was not an ethical person, because he didn't think about, he was overconfident on what he could accomplish. And I'm sure that he won't be able to accomplish that sort of thing, but, we don't know everything. And as engineers, we try to, it's in us, we try to make sure that everybody thinks that we're doing great, and the system we've designed works, to the exclusion of scenarios that might actually falsify our creation. So engineers should not be afraid of falsifying their creations. They should judge themselves. They should try to enumerate and however that's, work environments are different ones. But I think this is the only role that an engineer could have, is to make sure that, indicate to people, make it clear to people that, okay, what I've done works under these conditions, and I have no idea whether it would work in some other conditions.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's, let's hope that all engineers kind of
has the information that they have, managers or people who can decide, comes from the engineers themselves. So
so they can influence a lot of decisions. That's I'm going to ask you one final question, and that's my favorite question that I ask all the guests before I kind of do a bit of a summary and wrap up, and that is, have I not asked you a question that you wanted me to ask you?
Basically, I think that you've covered everything that was important. And as you said, we can go on talking about these things. So yes, I can give you a list of a million questions that I would have loved someone to ask me, and I just
okay, cool. Yeah, awesome. No, that's great. Thank you so much. I think I've you've covered many points in this kind of short amount of time that we've had. What I will do is, for all the viewers, I will try and do a summary of this talk and some of the kind of bullet points about the stuff that we've discussed in the description of all the videos on all the platforms that I post them. And until our next ethics talks, let me know what you think about this one. Let me know if you have any questions for me or Dr. Shahab. And until then, remember, technology can be fun, fashionable, and fabulous.